What's up, Freedom Fighters? It's Kasim, and today I want to talk to you about the 5 levels of entrepreneurship. I actually think this is really important. This is an important lesson because it's going to help save you from a lot of headache and heartache that ends up being kind of cliche. A lot of entrepreneurs run into the same problems and the same traps as they evolve. And when you understand the levels of entrepreneurship, it gives you insight in your evolutionary process is requiring you to change as you move from level to level. So that's about as theoretical as I want to get before we just dive right into it. Let me just share the 5 levels of entrepreneurship. There are 5 levels as I've defined them. Each level has a price that you pay. So there's a price that you pay, and the price is on a spectrum, by the way. There's the low end of the spectrum and the high end of the spectrum, as with all things. But there's a price you have to pay in order to be on each of the entrepreneurial levels. And each level comes with its own reward, its own type of freedom. At least that's the way that I'm going to contextualize it. So the 5 levels in order. Level number 1 is start. Makes sense, right? Now, I'm going to speak to you in terms of USD. So if you're somewhere else in the world, forgive me. Please feel free to contextualize this according to where you are, but it bugs me when people don't apply some level of specificity. So I'm going to do my best to just kind of wrap this with the thresholds that I've experienced in my life, which have been true more or less for about 20 years. So these numbers will adjust with inflation, but the sequence, I think, will stay pretty sound regardless of what happens with monetary policy. So level number 1 is the start level. And it's, anybody making anything from 0 to 10K and trying to figure out how to make their business their core thing. That's level 1 of entrepreneurship. Level 2 is our build level. This is our build. So you've gotten start out of the way. You actually have a ball rolling, and you're somewhere between 120 to 350K. And again, adjusted for inflation or adjusted for wherever you are, you're making an amount of money that you can make by yourself. You don't need help. You don't need employees. You don't have a huge vendor base. It's really just you. You might have some assistance. Maybe you have an EA, maybe you have some people you outsource to, but it's really, you're in the build phase, industry dependent, right? That's level 2. Level 3 is grow. This is grow. This is when you actually have a business. You've moved on from solopreneur to you're a small business owner. This is 350K to $1 million. You're approaching 7 figures, but you haven't really quite gotten there yet. And now you've got, infrastructure, right? Which is the catch-all word for all of the trappings of business. That's level 3. Level 4 is own. You're in excess of 7 figures, which tends to be the goal from an entrepreneurial perspective, right? Everybody wants to build a 7-figure business. And can it get bigger and better? Yes, it absolutely can. But beyond this point, beyond the 7-figure point, you actually own a business. You own a real business that, in theory, can function without you. And this is the line of demarcation because this is where private equity aims. Private equity companies, which are organizations built to buy businesses, will not talk to you until you're in the 7-figure range. And that's the absolute minimum, by the way. Generally ends up being 7 figures in profit, or EBITDA, which is a term they made up to annoy all of us. But that's level 4. That's own. Level 5 is what I call the freedom level. This is when you've exited. Now, exit doesn't necessarily mean sell your business, right? Exit can mean sell, or exit can mean put in a position to where you no longer have to participate in. You've exited, right? You've exited the business. So you sold it to somebody else, you put it on autopilot, you hired somebody to take it over. However it is you've accomplished this, you've exited. These are the 5 levels. Before I dive into the levels into greater degrees of specificity, I want you to look at the graphic that we've used to kind of visually articulate each of these levels. There's something interesting about this. Start is a little dinghy. It's like, man, just get out on the water, right? Build is I actually have something that maybe is seaworthy. Grow is there's elements of this that really feel like I'm building something that could ultimately end up kind of sailing itself. That's where you end up with own, which is like, this is something that somebody else could take and really make work. And then freedom, interestingly, breaks the context, right? Now we're on the island, and which is funny because I'm gonna kind of chew on my own visualization here. There's only so many Mai Tais by the beach that somebody can sip. And that's the idea that each of these vessels is putting you in a position to ultimately get to where you want to go. And so the question I'm going to ask you at the end of this lesson, at the end of this framework is, first, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Because not every level is right for every person. Like, not every person needs a 7-figure business. That's really important to understand. A lot of people feel kind of forced into this. It's like, oh, I guess I'm on the the ladder of success and I just got to keep going. You don't. You can stop at any one of these levels. What's important to understand is, where do you want to go? And can the vessel that you're currently piloting get you there? That's all we have to figure out. And so I like the visual here because it puts you in a position of sort of understanding, how the vessel you're piloting could potentially get you to where you are, or how you might need to level up. Now, some really important things to remember. Every level has a price. Every level has a price. Now, that price generally exists on a spectrum, right? So there's the low end of the spectrum and the high end of the spectrum. Every level also has a reward. And the price paid, generally speaking, is, what would you say? It's equal to the reward gained. If you believe in the Adam Smith logic of the invisible hand and, the kind of natural evening out of the economy, right? The price paid is equal to the freedom gained. Now, there's some leverage there, of course, but what we have to understand, what we have to ask ourselves is it worth it to you? Because the price you're going to pay is what the ecosystem you exist within has determined this freedom is worth. But you might not think it's worth that. And so I want you to keep that in mind as you go through this. And remember, it's okay to stop at any level. It's okay to stop at any level. But you have to make sure that the price that you're paying is worth the freedom that you gain. And everybody's definition is different. What everybody wants is different. There's something that's really important to understand. It's called the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle. The Peter Principle is a theory of management that states that people in a hierarchy are generally promoted until they reach their first level of incompetence, which is hysterical. Here's what happens. Somebody starts working within an organization and they do a good job. And people see them do a good job and like, gosh, you're amazing. We should give you more work, right? Work flows to the competent. And so what happens? They get promoted. But what's interesting about that little construct, the construct of promotion within a hierarchical structure, is the job they're promoted to isn't necessarily the job that they were doing, right? So if you work at a call center, let's say that you're a call center rep and you're on the phones and you're talking to customers, the call center rep gets promoted to a call center supervisor. But being a supervisor at a call center is way different than being a call center rep. And yet, this is just the way that all businesses work. So somebody enters an organization and they do a good job and they get promoted. And let's say they do a good job there and they get promoted. And they go do a good job there and they get promoted. But then they don't do such a great job. What happens? They stay. Isn't that weird? They stay. Now, in theory, what should happen is we should find out that, they're not doing a great job, and we should knock them down a rung. But for many reasons that, a lot of them make sense and some of them don't, that's not the way that it works, right? Because you also don't want to take the people that are doing great jobs and put them in a position where promotions could end up being something that is, a blow against their ego or a blow against their track record. And so people do a great job and continue to get promoted for as long as they do a great job until they land in a role they actually don't do a great job in. And then what? And then they stay. People will be promoted to their first level of incompetence, which is hysterically ironic and also true. Here's the thing. It's not just true for employees. It's not just true within an organization. It's also true of organizations. It's true of entrepreneurs. It's true of you. You are going to continue to level up as an entrepreneur. You do a great job at, the first level. You do a great job at the start level. Awesome. You move to build. You do a great job at build. Awesome. You move to grow. You're having a really hard time at grow. There shall you stay, right? Isn't that weird? It's oddly ironic. And so what I want to do with this framework is I want to empower you with the information that you'll need in order to really understand what level do you want to be at, what level suits your goals, and should you maybe back it up or move forward, right? Oftentimes we get stuck at a level that we just need to get through and get over. And the reason that's so important to understand is it changes the way you approach that level, right? Like if you're really trying to master a level, you're going to dig in and you're going to really niche down and you're going to go to school on it. But man, if you just need to get through something, there are elements of it that you really can't phone in. And you're going to see that a lot in entrepreneurship. There's a lot of things that you really can just phone in. And by phone in, I mean, you can half-ass it, right? Done is better than good. Let's move on. So I'd like to dive into each of these levels. And I'd like you to start to think about the level that you're at and how what we're learning might apply to how you're approaching that level. Now, if you're way beyond the levels that we're talking about, that's okay. Here's what's really interesting is entrepreneurship is cyclical. So it's still important that you learn all 5 levels. Let's jump in. Okay, remember, level 1 is start. This is the start level. This is when you jump. This is when you make the plunge. This is when you set off and really kind of attempt to do something entrepreneurial. Now, what's interesting about this level is a lot of people pretend to be at this level and they're not. Think about the image that we used. The image that we used is this little canoe. It's this little teeny tiny boat, right? The thing about the boat is in order to be on the boat, you have to be in water. So if your boat is, pulled up onto shore and you're sitting in it, or you're waxing the boat, or you're carving an oar, or you're watching videos about the boat, like all those things are fine. They're preparatory activities, but you're not on the boat and you're not in the water. You are not on level one until you actually begin to, like, and let's use the analogy. How would that analogy apply? You're actually conducting business. And we're going to talk about what that means specifically. There's 3 things that you need to do, and they're all intricately entwined, and they're very simple. You already know what they are. As a matter of fact, you could guess at them. This is where entrepreneurs are forged or broken. Most people never get past this level. You know what's really sad? Most people never really attempt this level. You have to jump. You have to take a step forward. You have to do it. So your goal here is to self-sustain, which in dollars and cents, I think is hit 10K a month. You need to be able to, in 10 grand a month, there was a study done at one point that $72,000 a year was the amount of money somebody needed to make in order to achieve maximum level of happiness and not worry about money. And past a certain threshold, happiness actually goes down. There's just a number that everybody in your society is trying to get to where they'll feel like they're self-sustaining. And that's the key to this level. You're trying to self-sustain. You're trying to make it so that you've built a mechanism that, feeds you, houses you, clothes you, educates you, gives you a little pocket money. So you're a W-2 worker with a dream, or, a gig worker who's trying to build a side hustle. That's level one. Here's the price you pay for level one. The low end of the price spectrum is the grind. Endless effort, rejection, self-doubt. You are moving through it. And sadly, there's so many things that you don't know, because entrepreneurship does not have a template, right? How could it? It has guides, but there's no template. There's no rules engine. That's a job. The job has a rules engine. So the price is on the low end, the grind. Endless effort, rejection, self-doubt. This is your hustling. And because there's no template, there's really no rule book, right? Like, that's a job. A job gives you the template. Entrepreneurship is you figuring out. It's the grind. That's the low end of the spectrum, no matter what. The high end of the spectrum is overwhelm. You're wearing every hat. You have no time. There's chaos disguised as progress. You're spinning your wheels. You're not necessarily getting anywhere most of the time. That's the spectrum of price. Now, here's what you're trying to learn at this level. And by the way, if you can't master these fundamentals, nothing else matters. You're trying to learn 3 things. You're trying to learn to sell. You're trying to learn to deliver. You're trying to learn to get paid. Sell, deliver, get paid. And you might think sell and get paid are the same thing, and I promise you they are not. I promise you they are not. As a matter of fact, it's relatively easy to sell. It can be very difficult to get paid, especially depending on the model that you've chosen. If you can't sell, you can't deliver, and you can't get paid, you can't be an entrepreneur. It's just a fact. And what's really sad about these particular skills is they tend to be divorced from the higher end skills that encourage people in entrepreneurship in the first place. If somebody's an extraordinary engineer, they're just amazing. They work wherever they work. They work at a machining shop, and they're just so good, and everything they create is like unbelievable. And everybody's talking about how good they are. Man, you should start your own firm. Do your own thing. It's like, yeah, I absolutely should, but they can't sell, and they can't manage expectations, and they can't invoice clients and figure out merchant processing and figure out their LLC. They're not going to be a good entrepreneur. Isn't that interesting and sad? You have to be able to sell. You have to be able to deliver. You have to be able to get paid. Now, I'm not telling you that sales is entrepreneurship. It's not. It's the learning lesson you need to alchemize for level one. You have to be able to sell. Got to be able to sell something. The number of people that come to me that say, gosh, I'm so good at what I do. If I could just sell more. And it's like, yeah, that's the game. That's entrepreneurship. The alternative is go be an employee, and the job will bring you the clients. Entrepreneurship it's this mechanism. So you're learning to sell, deliver, and get paid. The freedom that you achieve when you've conquered this level, when you really have accomplished everything necessary in level one, is self-sustenance. You can self-sustain. You feed yourself, right? You are your own self-contained vessel. And you get to kind of give the finger to the boss and walk away and, go to ballet recital anytime you want to and take a vacation if you need. You have the freedom to self-sustain. Is it all sunshine and rainbows? No, absolutely not. But you're putting yourself in a position where you really are sovereign, at least the beginning of sovereignty. Now, the warning I have for this level, this is the hardest level. Level one is the hardest level. And it might not be the most technically difficult, but it's the hardest because of what it takes just in terms of, your heart and your mind. As a matter of fact, most people think they failed at level one, and they didn't really. So there's something about this that makes it hard that's meta. But that's level one. Level two, build. The build phase. Level two is for people who've actually accomplished that transition into sovereignty, until self-sustaining, and they're growing. So you've built a business. The problem is you built a business that cannot run without you. Welcome to the trap. So you're a full-time freelancer, consultant, solopreneur, choose your nomenclature. No skin off my back, however it is you want to refer to yourself. What you really want, though, what your goal is to build a fulfillment machine that doesn't break. Because right now, you're it. And that's the price, by the way. So here's the price that you pay to be at level 2. On the low end of the spectrum, the price is responsibility. You are the engine. Clients, bills, promises, everything relies on you. That's the low end of the spectrum, no matter what you're going to pay that. High end of the spectrum is liability. Every mistake, delay, misstep, it's all yours to fix or pay for, right? So there's a lot of weight on your shoulders now, and this can get really overwhelming. The thing you need to learn at this level, systems and delegation. You have to start to learn systems and delegation. As a matter of fact, you will never, ever, ever really escape this level until you learn systems and delegation. And of those two, delegation is more important than systems, by the way, because you can delegate systems creation. Isn't that fun to think about? Now, the freedom that you achieve at this level is abundance. This is where you actually start making a little money. And it's not just money, by the way, it's money and flexibility. I mentioned at level 1, it's like, you're sovereign, you're your own boss, you can do what you want. But everybody who's been at level 1 knows that's not really true. You were working 100 hours a week, right? It's like, this fun joke is that an entrepreneur is the only person who will work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40. That's about what level 1 is. At level 2, you have some abundance. You're making money, right? At level 2, we've passed that 120 grand mark. We're somewhere between 100 and 350. You're making money. You have an abundance of money, and you should have an abundance of flexibility to a degree. I'm not saying that you're again the Tim Ferriss 4-hour work week, but you've got more than let's say more than your peers. Generally, at level 2, you're a successful solopreneur, freelancer, etc. Now, my warning for level 2 is this is where most people stop. This is where most people stop. And they stop because learning systems and delegation is hard. And all of that overwhelm and all of that weight that gets dropped onto your shoulders, that's enough to keep a lot of people down. That's just gravity holding you down. And this is where people stop or backslide to. A lot of people will kind of peek their head up and maybe dip a toe into level 3 and they go, oh gosh, I do not want to do that. And then they come back to level 2, which basically means they come back to the business model that they can run themselves without anybody else. That's what level 2 really is. Level 1 is you jumping. Level 2 is the business that's gets as big as you can get while you're still running it yourself. And maybe you have a little bit of infrastructure, but probably not. Maybe you have an assistant, maybe you have some freelancers or vendors, but really this all relies on you. If you go away, the business is gone. There's just nothing beyond you. That's level 2, which leads me to level 3. And this is the dance that I see most often, by the way. I see people dancing between level 2 and level 3. And they're trying to escape the level 2 gravity, but then they get into level 3, and level 3 is so hard. And it's a whole new set of skills. It's a whole new vessel. Right? The level 2 vessel, you can row that thing yourself. It's hard, but you can row it yourself. Level 3, you have to have help. And now you're learning, instead of actually learning how to, fulfill and deal with clients, you're learning people and management and vision and all this stuff, and it's hard. Level 3 is grow. This is where we're going to grow. Your success now depends on people that you don't necessarily fully control, right? Because they're autonomous humans too. So you're a small business owner. I hate that term, by the way. And I don't even really believe it's true, because a business would have to be something that runs independent of you, in my opinion, in order for a business to really be a self-contained entity. And in this particular level, it doesn't do that yet, right? It doesn't do that yet. What you want when you're at this level, you want to build something bigger than you. You want to build something that actually runs independent of you. That's the goal here. That's the goal at this level. Now, the price. On the low end, you are going to have to pay the price of letting go. You're losing control, and it feels like a risk. Delegation exposes all your trust issues. You're having a hard time figuring out how to deal with people. You constantly say, if you want something done, do it yourself. That's the trap. You're losing control. At the high end, the risk is quality. The more you scale, the more you grow, the harder it is to keep your original excellence intact. When you're at level 2, you're good. You're great. And as a matter of fact, think about this from a different frame. When we hire small businesses, vendors, people, if you've dealt with that solopreneur that's just amazing, great reviews, great case studies, great testimonials, everybody loves him or her, and you're just like, gosh, this work product is phenomenal. But then you watch them grow, and as soon as they move from level 2 to level 3, all the quality drops. Right? And what have they done? They've assigned you to one of their project managers or specialists, and they're overseeing the account is what they say. But then you just call back and you're like, look, Stacy, I'd rather just work with you. If I can work with you, I'll stay with you. If not, I got to find somebody else, right? That's the problem. That's the price that you're going to pay. And by the way, that's the price. In my opinion, and somebody feel free to throw something at me, quality will decrease. Your job is to make sure that it doesn't decrease more than the increase in scale and efficiency is able to account for, because nobody's ever going to care as much as you care. That's just the way that business works. So price at the low end is control, price at the high end is quality. Now, what you need to learn at this level, which is one of the hardest things to learn, is leadership and leverage. You have to learn to lead people. You have to learn people in general. And you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, like letting things go, delegating, letting people fall flat on their face, letting them learn. People are the most important part of business, especially the difficult ones, because those usually end up being the most competent. This is the level of leverage, of learning leverage. And if you can learn leverage, oh my gosh, like there's not a lot that's not available to you once you learn this lesson. That's the offer, is once you learn this lesson, you can do anything. I really mean that, because you have the most important entrepreneurial skill, which is talent. It's attracting and utilizing talent, but it's also one of the hardest things to learn. The freedom here is expansion. When you're at this level and you conquer this level, you now have the ability to earn through others, make an impact through others, impact more people. Like I'm actually not using the word scale on purpose, because I hate that word so much. I think other people, if they were building this framework, they would have called this the freedom to scale. I don't like the word scale, not because of what it means technically. I think the technical definition is fine. It's the way that people use it. They use the word scale to mean basically something that works completely sans all intervention. And I just don't think such a thing exists in a post-AI world. Or I shouldn't say that. It's not that it doesn't exist. It does exist. It's that it can no longer be monetized, right? It's ubiquitous. That's what AI is. So this freedom, I'm going to call the freedom, it's expansion. Leverage might be another word. Now, the warning I'll have for you is, for the people that really do begin to climb the ladder, let's say, move up in the levels, this is where most people fail. This is the level that most people go, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm backsliding to level 2. That's why most people stay or get caught in level 2. Level 3 is the level where most people fail. Now, what's sad about that is once you've conquered level 3, it all gets easier. Isn't that weird? Let's talk about level 4. Level 4 is you own a business. What does that mean? That a business, in my mind, to own a business is to own something that runs sans your intervention. So, my friend, former business partner of mine, Greg Bilbro, he used to say, you don't own a business unless you can leave for 90 days, come back, make more money, and have things be more efficient than they were when you left. And, that's everybody's definition is going to be a little bit different, but I think that's a good goal to aim for. When you own a business, it means that there's something that you're not required to intervene on behalf of. You don't have to operate this machine, right? You're not on the org chart, let's say. The business works without you. Now, here's what's really interesting is this is a level of discomfort for other reasons. A lot of people have a hard time not driving, not operating the machine. So level 4 is where we need you to be the business owner, but not necessarily the operator. And you're still kind of dancing between those things. When you move into level 4, you're the business owner, but you're not necessarily out of operations. Maybe you should be, but your goal here is to work on the business, not in it. Work on the business, not in it. And if and when you do that entirely, you actually naturally segue to level 5. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, the price you pay when you're at level 4 on the low end, remember, all prices is spectrum. On the low end is pressure, bigger teams, bigger stakes, and your decisions affect people's lives. This is scary for a lot of folks, myself included. This was the thing that I disliked the most about growing, and I can't even call it a big business. I had 100 employees. I guess compared to other businesses, that's nothing. It's a nit. For me, man, that was the most pressure I've ever felt in my entire life. I had 100 employees, 100 families, 100 nucleuses, each many with children and, some with grandchildren and communities that relied on what we were doing. That's a lot. It's a lot. That's the low end. On the high end is breaking. Growth is going to outrun your structure consistently. Cracks are going to appear in your systems consistently, not just your systems, in your culture, in your people, in you. Breakage is a part of this level. And when you think about it the right way, that's actually kind of a good thing. There's a story of Roush Racing, which I guess is one of the most successful racing teams in the world. And they were interviewing the gentleman that runs it about his methodology. And he says that, most people who build engines baby the engines. They cradle them, they coddle them. They're just so, sensitive, these little engines. And so they don't want to do anything to hurt them. And he's like, I have the exact opposite mentality. He's like, we build something. I put a brick on the gas pedal and I go to quick coffee, and I don't come back until I hear something break. And then I come back and I'm like, oh, what broke? Oh, this piston broke. Well, let's make the piston stronger. And then they improve the piston, and they look at other things around it on the periphery. And then they do the same thing. Then they go and they put a brick on the gas pedal, and they let it run and run and run until it breaks. If you can get comfortable with breaks and cracks in the systems, that's maybe your job. Your job is to figure out, oh, when this breaks, ta-da, I get to be Superman or woman and step in and start to build my business. It's a hard thing to be comfortable with, but that's the price. The price is breakage. What you're learning to be a CEO. I don't like that title, by the way. Call yourself whatever you want, but you're learning vision, capital allocation, growth, culture, like the things that when you do have a business that's running without you, working on the business it's kind of like, forgive the analogy, I hope I don't offend anybody, but it's like being a little god in a little teeny tiny environment, that you control, and you're going to go in there and you're going to tweak, and you're like, oh, if I turn the temperature up, everybody will get warmer, and they'll all have more fun. But wait a minute, I've ruined the ecosystem now. You're learning to be whatever title you want, but I think CEO is the technical title. The freedom here is a fun one. It's the freedom to focus. You get to focus on whatever you want. Now, most business owners cannot focus. And so they misuse this freedom, and they start doing all these different things and starting new lines of business and starting new businesses and going into different industries and doing all these things that have nothing to do with what makes them money. Ask me how I know. And so they don't view this as a freedom. They actually view it as a fail point, because they don't spend the time that they were spending in their business. They have all this money, all of this bandwidth, all of this labor. And so they start firing off in different directions. Just because it's misused doesn't mean that it's not a freedom. You have the freedom to focus, should you so choose, and focus on what you work on, who you work on it with, where you go. It really is an extraordinary level of freedom once you have it. It's something to aspire to, something to be attained. Now, my warning about this level, this is where money becomes dangerous. Bill Gates he has got a great quote, automation applied to an inefficient system only amplifies the inefficiency. That's true of money too. Money makes bad ideas move faster, right? So, and money helps us hide inefficiencies. You can buy your way out of a lot of problems. There are businesses that just buy their way out of problems perpetually. As a matter of fact, the standard operating procedure is just buy out of this problem. It's not advisable, right? And on a long enough timeline, as the business grows, so too do the problems, so too do the impact those problems have. So your job, remember, is to manage the breakage. That's what you're doing as CEO, or whatever you want your title to be. Which leads me to level 5. Exit. Now, remember, exit doesn't mean you've sold the business per se. That's traditionally what we mean by a business exit. But for my framework here, exit just means that you've made an exit. It means that you have evolved to a degree to where you are no longer beholden to this business. You don't have to run it. You don't have to manage it. The easiest way to do that, by the way, is to sell it. Because if you don't sell it, you constantly get sucked back in. I have made business exits for businesses that I didn't sell. I had an agency. I owned it for 8 years. And for the first 3, I was actively involved. And after that, I was an absentee owner. I did one 20-minute meeting a week with the executive director, half of which we skipped, and the other half of which we were like, well, I don't even know what to talk to you about. I've since sold that business, but I know it's possible. And at this point, you're a freedom fighter. You're not retired. I know you think you're going to do that, by the way. Nobody does. Nobody ever does. But you have freedom. This is it. This is the level of freedom. And the question here is, on each of the other levels, I've told you what you wanted, because it's pretty consistent from level to level. At this level, what do you want? And that's the hard part, by the way. That's the hard part. The price you pay for this level on the low end is stewardship. You have to guard the wealth that you've created, the people that you're responsible for, the purpose that you're building. No matter what, you have the price of stewardship. That's on the low end. On the high end, there's accountability. You are going to bear the weight of all of your decisions in ways that are hard sometimes to understand and that don't feel fair. When you achieve this level, you will lose friendships. People will judge you in ways that don't feel congruent, or even like things that you signed up for. Relationships change. Some people get uncomfortable around you that for reasons that have nothing to do with you. There's the saying, heavy lies the crown. This is that level. This is the level where you have to, you pay the price of success, which is, it's worth paying. And there are downsides. What you're going to learn at this level, wealth preservation, that one's important. It's a sad story. The guy who invented the movement, the early retire movement called FIRE, F-I-R-E, financial independence, retire early, he had to go back to work. because he didn't do a good enough job with wealth preservation. He published everything that he was doing, but the problem is he really didn't focus on growth. And I think preservation means putting yourself in a position where you're not just keeping what you have. It's biblical, right? There was the biblical parable that I'm going to get wrong, but like the I forgot who it was. It was like the landowner gives 3 of his servants money and one of them buries it. And one of them lends it out at a moderate interest, and one of them actually does really, really well with it. That's wealth preservation. If you just bury it, on a long enough timeline, inflation's going to outrun you. Some mistake, some issues, some, God forbid, health problem. And now all of a sudden you don't have that freedom anymore. So you have to learn wealth preservation. Learning money is hard, especially if you're I'm welfare. People don't teach us how to use money. And generally speaking, if you have a background similar to mine, you're going to do it poorly the first time. You're going to I bought the idiot's car and the house on the hill and always picked up the check, and it nailed me. And you will probably learn that lesson the hard way too. That's about where I am right now. That's why I'm shooting this video. I think my purpose is to help people like you. It feels good, I don't know if that's the grand purpose, the forever purpose, but I want to do something bigger than me. And you're going to get there too. You're going to achieve this level 5, and you're gonna be like, man, there's only so many Mai Tais by the beach, And for some people, by the way, that's enough. I haven't met many. Most people want something bigger. And that's a responsibility that, to be honest with you, is a little overwhelming. You're also going to learn how to design your legacy, whatever that means to you. But the freedom here, good and bad, is purpose. It's purpose. It's the evolution. It's you moving in a direction that feels, somehow transcendent. And I don't know. It's the Christ story in so many ways. It's the death and resurrection, right? This is the natural cadence of life. And it just gives you sort of this new, whatever it is that you want to pursue. It's a blessing, and it's a little overwhelming. Now, my warning to you on this level is on that note. It's not what you think it is. Man, I thought being rich would be awesome. And it's great. And I don't know that I'm much happier. You know what I mean? It just changes things. So I'd be careful about your expectations, if you don't mind me saying that. I always frustrated me when people said that too. When I was climbing the ladder, I was like, how dare you? But it's funny, the lessons that we can learn from other people if we choose. So just to go back, remember, every level requires a different vessel. Every level requires a different vessel. The question I have for you, and this is your homework, this is the exercise that you should participate in the framework. Is the vessel that you're currently in capable of getting you to where you want to go? That's what we're going to dive into. Now, what's really interesting about this is you can skip stages. Isn't that interesting? You can skip stages. Some people do. Some people go straight from start, and instead of going into build, they go into grow. And they just get, for whatever reason, usually there's an environmental factor. They kind of strike gold with an offer or figure out something other people haven't figured out. And suddenly they've now moved from, just trying to figure out how to sell and deliver to, oh gosh, I have to figure out how to manage a team. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. You could actually move straight to exit. That's happened too. I knew somebody who started a Kickstarter alternative. Kickstarter was, at the time, just this absolute phenomenon. Everybody's like, oh my God, that was amazing. How brilliant. And this guy and a friend rolled up like a clone or a script. Just trying to play Me Too. And it didn't do anything. It didn't go anywhere. It actually cost them a bunch of money. They put it on a shelf, forgot all about it. And then Kickstarter changed a policy. And suddenly people on the internet found this clone and they started using it overnight. It exploded. They got a 9-figure exit on this Me Too bullshit clone they made. Those things happen. Stories like that happen. They're uncommon, but you can skip stages. More important than skipping stages is really knowing where you want to go. Maybe you don't want a 7-figure business because you don't need an 8-figure exit. Maybe the build stage is great. And you're like, dude, I actually love doing the work. I really enjoy being with my clients. I love making $250,000 a year. I live in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm king of the castle at 250. I don't need anything more than that. I go to every soccer practice. I coach my daughter's little league team. I'm living the dream. Great. Stay there. Right? Where would you do anything else? Make sure that you are clear on where you want to go, because there's no reason to build vessels bigger than are necessary for your goal, for your destination. Every level has a price you pay and a reward you receive for that price. Do you want the reward, and is it worth the price you pay? That's the question that I want you to ask. It's okay. It's okay to stop at a level, but remember Peter's law. Don't stop at the first level of incompetence, right? This is the Peter principle. Don't stop at your first level of incompetence. Stop at the level that feeds you and your growth the most. So here are the questions. Here's your homework. Where are you now on the 5 levels Where are you now? And by the way, you might not be on level 1 yet. Don't tell me you're on level 1 if you're not selling and delivering, right? If you're thinking about level 1, you're not even on the map yet. Are you in a boat that's on the water? Where are you in the 5 levels? Where are you now? That's question 1. Where do you want to go? Do you want to grow level by level? Are you trying to reach an exit? Or are you like, man, I'm great. Level 2 is awesome. Or level 3 is great. I love this little incubator phase that I'm in. I love the people that I'm working with. I love these employees. I don't really need to scale beyond this. It's up to you. I know somebody like that in the construction space. He's a stonemason, and it's him and his son own the business, and they've got a handful of employees that they love. And I used to run their ads. Every time they would get, they'd book out for the whole year within a couple of months, and they'd be like, all right, turn the ads off. And I used to ask them, you guys don't want to, you know what I mean? Like, you could bring on another team, you could get more equipment. They're like, no, we like where we are. That's great. I love that clarity. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? And once you've identified where you want to go, can your current vessel get you there? Can what you're doing now get you to where you want to go? I see this, I did a lot in the agency space for marketing agencies because I've built 6 of them now. And so often people were climbing a ladder propped against the wrong wall. They'd come to me with their agency problems and they'd be like, how do I grow? How do I scale? How do I manage? How do I hire? But then when I'd zoom out and I talk to them about their goals and what they want to do and where they want to go, there's no way the business they were building, even at its best, could have gotten them where they wanted to go. There's no way. And what's sad is, it's pretty obvious, but it takes the person from the outside looking in because people just hop onto this merry-go-round and like, all right, I'm on level 1, I need to get to level 2. I'm on level 2, I need to get to level 3. I'm on level. Well, do you? Do you? And is the vessel you're building going to get you there the way that you want to go? That's your homework. We're going to dive deeper in some of the resources if you want to. What's nice about this, I think if you do this work, if you do it well, it's going to help you understand what's next. So I hope this was valuable to you. If you're watching this on YouTube, all of the resources are available for free in my free forever community, 3x Freedom. You can go to learn.3xfreedom.com. That's learn.3xfreedom.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next framework.